we're going to be working on upgrading and outfitting the car hauler bus. We've done a lot of work to this thing so far, but we've still got a laundry list of things we need to do before we put this thing back in service. That being said, before we dive into anything and start tearing this thing apart and making it inoperable for a little bit, I'd like to take it for a little drive and just see if there's any potentially new issues that have popped up since the last time we drove it, which I think was the last trip we took it on. Make sure everything's good and we don't need to add anything to our laundry list before we start working on some of the projects that we have planned. So we're basically working on improving the reliability of it, you know, sorting out all the little issues and odds and ends, but also the usability, you know, improving things that make it just a nicer vehicle to use on trips for what we do with it. All right, guys, before we get too deep into today's video, I wanted to talk to you about today's video sponsor, PDS Debt. So I am a big proponent of staying out of debt. I have a huge dislike for debt. I've spent my whole entire life trying to avoid it to the extreme that my #1 goal in life is to pay my house off early so that way I can live debt-free. PDS Debt provides a service to match you with debt solutions based on your specific financial situation, where you can not only save money, but pay your debt off in a fraction of the time. They also strive to understand your specific needs and ensure that they can offer you alternative solutions to get yourself out of debt, becoming debt-free. So if you're interested in checking it out, you're ready to stop waiting, start saving, head to pdsdebt.com/Taylor to get started on your free debt assessment today. It only takes 30 seconds. It's super quick, and it's a great way to just see where you stand. So again, that's pdsdebt.com/Taylor. I do want to give a huge thank you to PDS Debt for sponsoring today's video, allowing us to do what we do here. And that being said, it's time to get back to doing what we do here. So let's get to it. All right, well, it is, now that I think about it, it has been quite a while since we've driven this thing. I think the last time was when we were headed to Kentucky and the power steering line failed, which is why it ended up getting parked, which we've since fixed, along with a bunch of other upgrades and odds and ends and things of that nature. But point is, we have not driven this thing more than onto my street and back in a long time now. I don't know how long that's been, but it's been a while. So I'm excited to get this thing back out on the road again. It needs to get driven, and we'll take it up on the highway, get it up to highway speed, and just make sure everything still works good. Ideally, we don't have anything to add to our list, but if we do, it's better to know now than to know later. So let's kick the tires like the fires. Forgot how cool this thing sounds. Forgot how much it moves too. This thing gets out of its own way pretty good. Oh, there's the Jake brake. Soots a little bit. Totally forgot what it was like to drive this thing. This is so weird. It's been so long. I wish I had a jack. So I was thinking about downshifting to second there to see how well the Jake brake works at higher RPM, but I had no idea what RPM I was at. Oh no! Shit. Oh gosh. The whole mount fell for that screen, which I need. Throw a little sauce here. Oh, dude, this thing gets down. Like, it pulls. So, if you're unfamiliar with this bus, basically the setup is we have a 400 horsepower, 1,450 foot-pounds of torque, M11 Cummins in it, M11 red top, and normally they came with a 2-stroke Detroit diesel, which, you know, I mean, people love those things. but that's starts to get a little extreme. I like the concept of the year range of this Cummins. It's kind of modern enough, but old enough. Makes good power. I'm gonna pass this guy, but we gotta get on the highway soon. That's where I go out on the river on my boat. Brakes are another odd thing to get used to. Oh no, the ram's open. You don't realize how impatient people are until you're driving something big that doesn't accelerate like a rocket ship, you know? Alright, yeah, let's need you to do that. Downshift. That's right. I'm foot to the floor right now. That's pretty much how you have to drive these things. Oh, and my turn signal's down here, a foot pedal. So you don't see me messing with the turn signals, that's why. It does drive nice and stable. It's not too bad with the windows open either. Check all our temps, voltage good, transmission temp good. We're going just under 70, 68. According to the GPS speedo. I know it tops out around 73. I'll stay in it for you. Just to see. 73. 73.4. 74. We're going downhill. 74.5. Okay, that's not bad. Our temps are holding steady. Sorry, it's a little windy in here. This is like where it likes to cruise. You cruise along, and then we set. You got your cruise control set at around 70 usually. That's pretty happy spot for it. I can't remember how to go back to coast. This thing drives good though. It's like a long haul cruiser. It's super comfy when you're chilling right here. And you just kind of got to slow aim drive it, it is what it is. We also tightened up the steering box and it is way better. So I think it's the first time I've driven it since we did that. There's slop, but you can feel it's kind of doing something. It's just kind of like the load on the tires and stuff. Also, obviously, the steering wheel's a little off. We need to adjust that. We're going to take a pretty narrow road back home. Just, get some more driving. That's one thing, too. It's a big beast. Got to start braking early. People behind you get impatient. We're going into a 25-mile-an-hour zone. I wish this thing would downshift. There it goes. Oh, and 25, around the 25. Dude's like swerving all over my bumper like it's so funny. But I'm sure I'm that guy. I'm trying not to be a hypocrite. Can't blame him. He's in a car, it feels like we're crawling, but to me it feels like we're moving, doing 30 around that thing. That's another funny thing, is having to hold your foot on the turn signal all the time. You kind of get stuck like that and you forget about it. I gotta fix that drawer. We're gonna turn that into a sub box. A stupid drawer to keep opening. So it's full throttle. We're getting down, dude. 30. That's 30. 35. Man, we were ripping. I'm about to have to let out of it that fast. Got up to speed that fast. I don't know, man. This thing drives really good. Like I said, it's the first time driving it since we did all the power steering stuff. And it is leaps and bounds better than it was. Those rattles are annoying, but that's what you get when you got a house on wheels, you know? The other weird thing to get used to is the steering ratio. You know, you make a pretty big swing and that's like a pretty small correction. But obviously you gotta get used to that. Oh, we might hit this branch. Oh, that's low. Oh, we're good. Doesn't like third. So good to know, third below 40 or so. I just didn't experiment much when we got it because I was just trying to, you know, get used to driving it, hoping we made it there, whereas now we can kind of experiment and see what we can change, what we can make better. You know, information that's good to know. Like if there wasn't someone behind me, I'd test out how fast we can stop if we really had to slam on them. It's like for all I know, every time I brake, I'm near full pedal. We're going for it. We got a hill, too. Full throttle, baby! Climb that hill! It's honestly climbing better than my truck and trailer does, like when it's loaded down. Granted, we don't have a car in the back, but we're already up to almost the speed limit, going up the hill. It's a crazy hill, but it's a hill. I notice it when I'm in my truck and trailer, trying to pull up that, like, because you come from a stop, and you're kind of in that weird speed where it's like not quite into lockup yet, and it'll struggle a little bit. I haven't even looked at the temps in a while. Highest I've seen the coolant, like 185, and then 180 for the transmission. It's pretty normal. It's a hot day today. And we're doing a lot of starting and stopping. And we have got super lucky with the timing on making our turns. There's like a little pop thing that we need to investigate when you steer hard left. I'm gonna just start using this keypad to lock it into certain gears, like in these scenarios, so it doesn't upshift too early. Turn the Jake off real quick. What did we determine was the best way to get in here? I don't know. Let's find out. Back it in real quick. The only thing I worry about backing it in like this is the up high trees. So there's branches that come out over the road. Could have made it, but we'll pull forward just a little bit. Oh no, I lost my camera. Come back. Having that backup camera is crucial. Yeah, I mean, I'd say this thing's almost easier to maneuver than dealing with a truck and trailer, just because you don't have to deal with the articulation aspect. You know, it's just like backing up a car or a truck, just longer. And you're at a different point. That's one of the weirdest parts is, you know, you're up over the front wheels, so you have to take that into account. But it's kind of helpful because you can pretty much just like, if you can see whatever it is, you're not going to hit it. You know what I mean? So I'll get it backed in nice and tight to this side. Coolant temp went right back down to 180. Not that it was high, but back to 180 is good. Does this mirror thing work? Oh my god, I did not realize the power mirrors actually worked until right now. That's crazy. That's about all she's got on the up. Wow, that's awesome. I think we're good though. Shut her down. Sweet. Alright, well, now that we know it still runs and drives good, we can get to work. We're going to need to inspect some of the suspension stuff, but we'll get into that later. We got other stuff to do. But let's get this thing plugged in, actually. It's hot in here. Let's get it cooling down. I need to replace this controller. On and off it's tricky. Obviously we've got mechanical stuff to deal with. I've noticed the air pressure is bleeding off a little faster than I would like. So we need to check that. We got stuff to do underneath, but we're still working on the amenities, the features. So one of the things this bus has been lacking from day one is some auxiliary, some ambient lighting in here for when you're going down the road at night and you need to be able to see, but you don't want light that's going to be distracting. You know, someone needs to get up and grab something, or someone's sitting back here in the cabin. It's super dark or it's way too bright. So I want some sort of ambient lighting for both the cabin area and then up here as well. You know, if you drop something or you're looking for it, you need to put your cup down. You can't, it's pitch black in here. That's one of my favorite features that newer vehicles come with, is that ambient lighting where you can see around in the cockpit. You can see inside the car, but it doesn't distract you from viewing outside the car. So that's kind of what I'm going for. That's the goal. Yeah, see, ideally we can use this switch. We'd have end station lights, which would be up here, and then overall interior lights, which would ideally be both. That's how it wires. But for whatever reason, flipping that switch turned off this AC, which has been really tricky to turn on lately. I'm trying to figure out why this AC doesn't like to, controller doesn't like to turn on. Let me try, what did I do? Reading lights? That's what I switched on and it freaked out. So something I'm really trying to avoid with all of these upgrades is adding any extra stuff. You know, we have switches here that don't seem to be doing anything. We might as well use them, but it does get a little bit tricky because then we've got to kind of back engineer the factory wiring and determine what's going on and what's going where. Easier said than done. So one of the interesting things about these buses is that this year model had all white wiring, and you can see that is accurate. All of our wires here are white. So I wonder if are they marked? I think they're numbered. No, that's the same number as I lied. Either way, we basically just need to determine what all this is. But this neon lights one doesn't look like it's hooked up to anything. We know that this driving lights one is what powers our AC controller here. But I'd like to just hardwire that to have power on ignition. There's no reason why there needs to be a separate switch when it has its own switch. So anyway, I'm gonna get the old multimeter out and try to make some sense of this. So I was hopeful that I could do some quick and simple probing with the multimeter and get a good idea of what's going on in here, what extra stuff we've got, and what we can use, and we would be on our way. However, one of the interesting things about the way this bus is wired is that nothing's grounded to the chassis. It's all grounded back to a bus bar area for the battery box, fuse box location. So trying to find a good ground that's a common ground is actually pretty tricky, and it's just leading us straight down the rabbit hole, which is not where I wanted to go with this. Well, I can't remember if I'm pretty sure its driver's light is that one, which has been a little hit or miss. And now this isn't working, but I don't remember the driving lights having to be on for that to work. I know it was reading lights, but these are both grounded. Basically, I've got to dig further in here if I want to figure this out. When I've had these panels off before, I was only ever willing to take one off at a time because I came in here to do some new gauge backlights and add some wires and do some things like that. But this time we've got to go fully deep in there. We have to take all the panels off at the same time so that we can trace back this added on wiring. The factory wiring is great and well done, but there's all this stuff that's been added on and spliced and just twisted together, and wires running different directions. And the telltale sign is they're a different color. They're not white. All the factory wires are white. So if I can get all these panels off and trace back these wires, I can see A, what they are for, what they're doing, where they're going, and B, get rid of all of the unnecessary stuff that may no longer be in use, which will then simplify everything for us to kind of diagnose it and get a mental map going of what all this wiring's here for, where everything goes, and all of that. Now, the scary part about pulling all these panels off at the same time is it would be very easy for one of these wires to pop off as I'm digging my hands back around here and pulling these panels off, and us to have absolutely zero clue where that one wire went since all the wires are the same color. It would be very challenging. Now, one of the nice things they did when they built this bus at the factory is they made these panels all have bulkhead connectors to where you can disconnect the panel and pull the whole panel off. However, whoever added on all this wiring, this random wiring here and there, they didn't do that. They weren't so kind. So the only way to take the panel off completely is to figure out what that wiring does and get rid of it. All right, well, I spent probably way too much time tearing this all apart and trying to determine what went where. One of the main things was this AC controller. It was driving me nuts. I'd have to turn it on and off a bunch of times to get it to power up. There's also the control wiring for it here, which is taped together, and it seems like when I move that around enough, it can cause it to turn off as well. So found a lot of stuff. I'd love to fix all of this, but we're going to fix as much of it as we can. Like this wire looks like it's just twisted onto this wire and then taped up, and then it goes maybe 6 inches, and then it's butt connected to turn into another wire. Not splitting off to anything, just maybe they didn't have long enough wire, I don't know. It's kind of against my pet peeves, but we've got a pretty good lay of the land, what's going on here, what everything is. Fortunately, we were able to get this out of the way and make some space so we didn't have 3 panels dangling around it in our face. So that being said, now that we know what's going where and what's for what, basically we can use these left 2 switches for our cockpit lights. So we can have 2 different settings of cockpit lights in here, and then we're going to have another switch which should perfectly fit in this dimmer location. Should be pretty nice. I'm excited. So I'm going to fix as much of this as I can get to of this jankily done add-on wiring. Then we're going to wire up our switches. We're going to take those to a plug and have them disconnectable, so that way the plug is tucked away out of sight but also accessible enough to where we can put all this back together and just wire to that plug. There's a lot going on in there. So that being said, you know the deal. I'm gonna quit jibber jabbering. It's time to get into it. Every bone in my body wants me to redo all of this wiring, but obviously that would be a massive undertaking to do that, and it's not all that bad. It's just kind of silly and not well thought out for the add-on stuff. You'll have a crimp from attaching one wire to another, but then an inch after that, another crimp to attach that one wire to 2 wires when you could do that all in one crimp. I can't stand having any crimps anywhere. I like doing end-to-end wiring where you just have the pin on one side, the pin on the other. So having multiple crimps for no real reason drives me crazy. So at least we can fix that part of it up for now until we get a better idea of what all of this is for and where it's going. We've got a pretty good map, but man, it's not been easy on us. There's just some things that don't really make a whole lot of sense. So once we got that cleaned up, we could start working on our add-on wiring. So I'm crimping some new terminals on these because I hate these junky plastic ones that don't heat shrink. They just never stay crimped well, and they allow moisture in. So obviously you got to do some heat shrink connectors, and we've also got to add some daisy chain wires to wire from the one switch to the other. We're going to use the same power for both switches. We're not going to, none of these lights, all of these are pretty very low amperage LEDs, so they don't pull a ton of power anyway. All right, well here we have our power, our ground, and then those looping over to this switch as well. So we're on the home stretch of this part, hopefully. One thing at a time. Let's keep on trucking. So I have kind of a standard MO when it comes to wiring, and that involves Deutsch connectors and having basically disconnectable sub harnesses. I don't like doing wiring where it's really hard to pull the whole harness out. I like each individual branch, if possible, to be disconnectable. So where I complain about butt connectors and having multiple crimps in a wiring harness, I kind of do that to myself with connectors, but at least it adds some purpose. So there's some logic behind it, but that's basically what we're doing here, just wiring these 4 wires to one connector. That way it's accessible, it's easy to get to, and we can disconnect it in the future if we want to pull that panel out, which is like how they did it with the factory wiring. So after getting all the wires crimped with their connectors and heat shrunk and routed, we could pin them into the connector and check one more time to make sure we've got this right, and we've got power and ground where we need it and in the right spots. All right, well, we got all of our switch wiring done. You can see we got our 4 wires going out, and then they go to our plug here. So power ground for one, power ground for the other. This is all cleaned up nicely, not as bad as it was before. And we got some wire nuts here. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and just crimp connect these just to make them nice, tape them up nicely, make sure it still works, and then we'll go ahead and put all this back together. I also picked us up some fresh stainless screws from Ace, so we have all matching screws, all matching hardware for putting our gauge panel pieces back on. So should be a nice improvement. Definitely leaving it better than we found it. So you know the deal. Enough jibber jabber. I'm gonna get back to work. I've been sitting in this chair for far too long. Something on my hopefully, maybe eventually to-do list with this bus is to basically have someone laser engrave and cut all new versions of these panels with everything that we need and nothing that we don't, because you have to keep in mind this bus was made in 1989, and it was made originally as a New Jersey Transit bus, and then in 2005 is when it was converted to this RV car hauler situation. So things like the generator and different things like that were added on that were not there before, and then there's things that are on there still that we don't need anymore. So it'd be nice to just start from scratch with these panels, but for now we're gonna work with what we got and get it put back together and hope and cross our fingers that everything still works and we don't have to go on a needle in a haystack hunt trying to determine what one wire that got unplugged means and what it does to make everything work again. But fortunately, with all these new screws, they went back together pretty easy. All right, whew. We got it all back together. I was worried about this, my stoplight. It should come on with the brakes, but maybe I need ignition on for that. Let's fire it up. Make sure we got oil pressure. Yep, voltage, yep. Let's see, the headlights should be hitting, yep. I think our air brake release is leaking a little bit, but it is all back together. Everything seems to work. We've got our 2 switches now with our plug. There's a lot of work for 2 switches and a plug, but sometimes that's the way it is. You know, I didn't want to add an extra switch. I wanted to do it the right way. We had these switches sitting here, might as well make use of them, and now we've got them. So yeah, instead of adding another switch. So I'm happy. As much as it was a lot of work just to get to 2 working switches with a plug, worth it. Worth it. So it's time to start installing our lights and kind of see how much light each thing puts out to get an idea of how much we need to divide it, how many different switches we need. So for lights, we've got these are like neon, but they're LED strip lights. Got 2 packs of those, got a thinner version of those. I've got these 2 strips, which are also red. And then I've got these rock lights, which This is because I just never trust the double-sided tape. And there's nothing worse than putting a lot of time in, putting some lights in, and then within a week they're falling down and you're trying to stick them back up. So I'm going to use these as much as I can. I got 8 of them. So we got a plethora of lights. We got switches. We got our wiring there with our plug. We got everything we need to get to work. So let's do that. Let's start putting these lights in. I decided to start with these easy ones that go over the instrument cluster. I had put just kind of a standard white light here to give us some light on the gauges, and it just didn't work out well. So I wanted to make sure these fit. However, after putting them in and just kind of plugging them into the connector to make sure everything still worked, it did not work at all. Well, we are on the struggle bus. Slight hiccup in the plan. Now, I only have 1.7 volts at this power wire that I could have sworn I had 12 volts at, which just doesn't make any sense. So, I need to go get into the fuse box and take a look. We might have to just run our own power wire. We could tap off this. I don't want to risk doing that. Granted, these are going to take like no voltage, but still, it bothers me. I want to know where my power's coming from. This is when I don't like wiring. I always talk about how I like wiring, but I don't like this kind of wiring. I don't like digging through a harness where all the wires are the same color and trying to determine how they wired a bus in 1989. But there's a fuse box, and we're going to go open it, and we're going to see what we see. I've got power and ground up here, main feed, so I guess in theory I can just run my own wire. That might be what I have to do, because for whatever reason they didn't use a lot of these. I don't know why you wouldn't use these, but maybe they just didn't want to hack them up. I mean, this is really fancy the way they did this from the factory. Look at this. I'm sure this is giving some of you massive anxiety. Oh wow. All the bus bars and fuses. Can you see that? Yeah, I think we're just gonna do what they did, and then we'll just have to run them to that switch, daisy chain, like how it is. Done. So after putting the fuse box back together, closing it up, I decided to just switch gears a little bit, stop messing with the wiring, and move on to getting the lights mounted. Regardless of what we do with the wiring, how we resolve that problem, the lights still need to go on, and they still need to go in the same places. So I put the panel back together, and then went ahead and installed my second gauge cluster light so we could see how both of these would look when you're sitting in the driver's seat and looking out the window to make sure it's not too much light. All right, let's try these out, both of them. Oh yeah, that's solid from my driver's eyesight, especially once this part's back on. Yeah, that's tucked in there nice enough to where it doesn't shining at my view. Then I can also see all the switches well at night. So once we had our testing complete, it was time to put that part back together and then move on to mounting our rock lights. These cockpit lights are the most important to me. They're the biggest upgrade that we need, because when you're driving this bus down the road at night, you literally cannot see anything inside the bus. And once you get used to that newer car ambient light, it's hard to go back. Plus, I mean, at the end of the day, I think it'll just look cool. So the only downside is when you're trying to mount these lights in areas where they're not going to shine at you and be in the way, it means they're a little bit difficult to get to, which makes them a little bit difficult to mount. But in the grand scheme of things, really not too bad to get these lights in there. Just trying to use enough to make sure we kind of accomplish the goal of having a good amount of light in here, but not use so much that it's going to be too bright and then it's overpowering, or we never use them, or, you know, I mean, worst case we could add a dimmer, but just trying to find that right combination of enough but not too little, and the right locations to spread the light out evenly across the board so we have light everywhere and not too much light in one spot. As far as getting up under here where the pedals are, the only thing I could mount these to where the lights weren't going to shine back at me was the cables for the defrost controls. So not my finest moment, not my best work, not something I'd say I'm super proud of, but it does get the job done. And if we find a better spot later, we can always move them. So that's my justification, at least. Oh yeah, dude, that is amazing. That is literally perfect. Oh, why is this one not on? The only thing is that one back there, the passenger cup holder area. Alright, well with the exception of that one, this is great. And if we were to have interior lights on, or well, headlights, so we have, you know, our gauge cluster and stuff lit up. Oh yeah, it's so nice. I can see all these. Oh yeah, this is A1, dude. This is so much better than it was. I mean, in comparison, this is what you would be seeing in here. Absolutely nothing. Just pitch black versus that. Oh yeah, this is great. Man, I can't get over it. I'm gonna look at it from back there. Yeah, that looks killer. So if you imagine, give you the point of view as a driver, you know, you can see absolutely great out, which is why I chose red. One, I just like red as an accent color, but two, it's good for giving you light, being able to see, but while not messing with your night vision too much. But, oh, it looks so cool! I can't get over it. Sweet. Alright, well, now that we got some daylight back, it's time to route our wires. I'm glad we got to test them at night and see what they look like. I am really, really happy with how all that turned out. I think that's exactly what I was going for. So now we just need to route this Medusa of wires. We got wires everywhere, but it shouldn't be too bad. They've all got a pretty good option, pretty good route to go. Before we route them to a location and commit to which kind of batch of lights is going to be on which switch, I want to get the other lights in as well and just see what they all look like together in case we want to add any to this section or remove any. I think this section's like pretty much sorted. The way it was is pretty much exactly what I was going for, but you know, changed my mind before, so let's get the other lights installed and see how those look. I've been hanging on to these dang lights for so long, waiting to install them, and I'm so eager to see if it's going to work. There's some times where you have kind of a plan in your head and then you execute it and it just doesn't work out, and this could most definitely be one of those times. These could just be an eyesore or be annoying, but they could be really cool too. Okay, that is cool. Oh, that's so sick. I wish we didn't have the light coming in from it. That's it, though. That's happening. That looks so cool. Oh, my God. It's amazing. That is it, dude. Start mounting them. So cool. So now that we know our plan is going to work, it's just a matter of properly installing these and attaching the two together. The one length isn't quite enough to go all the way around, so we're going to tie the two together and we're going to meet them at the corner where it's going to be easiest to route the wiring from. So we got to try to make this overlap look nice and then basically route them from there. So one of the things that really drew me to these as opposed to some of the kind of other light strip options is that they mount with these little clips. So we screw the clips in and then they slide into the clips, which I much prefer over the sticky tape mounting style because things get hot and then the tape kind of melts off and the jostling, and depending on what you're attaching it to, I've not had good luck with the stick-on string lights lately, so I try to avoid them at all costs. Sometimes they're the only option, but these should hold up a lot better because they're actually physically mounted with screws and clips. So once we got them both routed at full length, we still need to cut them down. It's time to see what they look like all installed. Unless you're really looking for them, they are completely unnoticeable, which was the entire goal. I'll probably put a little glue or double-sided tape in between the mounts just to keep them from moving around, but I'm really happy with that as far as that goes. Anyway, moment of truth, let's see what they look like. Wow, dude, that looks so good. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's perfect. When we're just chilling in here at night, it's like a nightclub, dude. It looks so good. Sorry, that came out way better than I ever could have hoped. That is exactly what I wanted. That is going to be so sick at night. Like if we're watching a movie at the track, you got your nice, chill, ambient lighting up there. We'll probably add in as well some lights in here where we used to have stuff with some plexiglass covers. So it'll be a whole vibe for sure. What I'm going to end up doing is basically mounting my own little fuse box down under that fuse box because there's power and ground there, a main feed, and then running not only the wiring up for these lights that we just installed, but extras for the future. A nice big bundle so we don't, route a pair and then another pair and then another pair. That way we have expandability. However, to do that, obviously, if we're going to come from that side, we got to take all these panels back off and route the wires back through there, which is what we need to do with some of these anyway. So I'm going to wait until we get that stuff in to do it all at once. Now, that being said, we do have a few more lights we could add. So I've got 2 rock lights left, which we can wire individually. And then we have this strip light. We've accomplished the goal as far as lights we needed to add, but it's hard to not want to go down the rabbit hole and add more. So let me know what you think. So moving on, we need to do some lights in the garage here. So we added these 12-volt lights recently, where we've got them under both cabinets as well as over the door here. And these have been amazing because there's a lot of times where you're not plugged in or the generator's not on, and before there was no light in here. Now we have plenty of light in here. And really it's a good amount of light if we're just, at the track in the pits. We're not spending much time in here coming in and out to be able to see in here but not be overwhelming. However, when we do really need to see, we have the 120-volt lights. The only problem is these are all different color temperatures. You've got legit fluorescence here, newer type of LEDs here, older type of LEDs there, and there. And it's something that's annoyed me for a while, not to mention we have no light back here. So I'm gonna change that. We're gonna replace all the 120-volt lights to all matching. Whoa, humidity in here. I guess realistically we only need 4. So we're connecting onto 2. Better hurry up. And down the hatches. Just in time. It's coming down now. Time to get back to work. This does make our job a little more challenging. Slight problem. We only have 6 of these clips. We need 8. Fortunately, of all the projects, putting up these lights is about as easy as it gets. I've used this style of light pretty much everywhere. We put some of it at Ben's shop, then at my shop, in the garage, so it's pretty straightforward and it's pretty simple. My only fear is they might be a little too bright, but I usually prefer more light or too much than too little when it comes to lighting. Well, we obviously gotta shorten these wires. They're always either too long or too short. But I've made a crucial mistake. I definitely do not have any more of those clips. Definitely on the struggle bus, but we can still power them up and see what happens. We're not going to leave them wired this way, but I just want to see what they look like. Alright. Oh, wow! Dude, that is way better. That's with everything off. But these, oh man, I am so happy with that. I was a little worried that them being head height would be annoying, but I mean, regardless, we need some more clips. It's 2 clips per works in a house. It definitely doesn't work in a bus that's rolling down the road, but they now are a little bright when you're standing in here. Oh, and this is nice too if you gotta go in the cabinet. Oh, the light shines directly in there. Man, now we just gotta clean it up, just like the rest of our wiring and projects, man. It's been a struggle. There we've got the accent lighting and the main lighting. This is no main lighting. And this is no accent lighting. That's pretty slick though, man. You can really see in here now, especially back there, and we're still missing the one because I didn't have enough clips. But that being said, I am out of time, unfortunately, because my neighbor across the street, Bill, it's his birthday, and he's having a little birthday get together that starts like now, or really like half an hour to an hour ago. So it's always a struggle with these kind of things because, you know, day comes and I'm like, oh, I have so much to do, but I can't let this bus project keep me from doing normal person that doesn't work 7 days a week things. That being said, despite the struggles, the trials, the tribulations, I am really happy with how the cockpit lights turned out. What a game changer that it's going to be cruising this thing at night. And then our accent lights up there, man, they are slick. And then now we got plenty of light in the garage. So solid improvements, solid improvements. That being said, I'm going to end it here. But I do want to say thank you guys for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for everything you do. I appreciate it. And yeah, can't wait to see you next time. I didn't say bye. Goodbye.